On this episode, Andy is joined by the Liverpool Lip himself, Earl Joseph. Welcome to the Road Home from Wrestling interview.
Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock all my doors, and it's the only way I live in cars.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Road Home from Wrestling interview. And my name's Andy. I'm coming to you live to tape. And today we have a very interesting guest. It is the Liverpool Lip himself, Earl Joseph. How you doing, Earl?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's a genuine honor to be here. Looking forward to another fantastic and salubrious conversation right here.
I'm not going to pretend like I know what salubrious means, but I'm assuming it's good.
Neither am I.
And folks are immediately going to notice your accent. But where are you at right now?
I'm in my spare room in the west side of Indianapolis.
Yeah, so that's the big question that I had for you. You're kind of a person who's kind of shown up in the Indiana territories out there, and goddamn, aren't there like 5,000 promotions out there, which we'll get into. But you're a guy who I haven't met in person, but I did see you at Bizarro Lucha last weekend. But you seem very busy, and I didn't want to bother you. So, but how did you end up in Indianapolis? You're obviously not from there. Tell us a little bit about how that all happened.
Yeah, that's normally the second question I'm asked when people say, "Where are you from?" And they say, "What the hell are you doing in Indiana?" So that's normally the sequence with which I'm used to work with. Excuse me, my story is, I suppose, maybe innocuous enough when compared to wrestling, in as much as in the summer of 2016, I met the woman who would become my wife online. We met through Facebook by pure chance. And over the next couple of years, I was pinging back and forth between Liverpool in England and Indiana. And in that time, we had become engaged to be married, and we were waiting for your government to give the okay on a marriage visa, which took its time. I understand these things take their time, but it can be frustrating. But it was only in the 20th of November 2018 that I permanently moved to Indianapolis. And because of the terms and conditions of my marriage visa, which stated that I had 90 days to marry once I landed in the United States, or else I was breaking the law. I know it's lucky I had someone to come to, really. Otherwise, it'd have been a bit of a mad dash. But yeah, so we married maybe December 14th, so 3 weeks or so after I landed in the States. So as you can imagine, that first month it was quite the whirlwind, moving to the other side of the world and then becoming a married man for the first time. And all of that happened 14 months ago. So relatively speaking, I haven't really been in this country very long still.
That is unbelievable. And I have a weird question for you, but I'm often interested in, and I know this is strange, but how people kind of perceive time. Because I would imagine that this last 14 months is the longest / shortest time of your entire life. Does that describe it kind of well?
That's the most adequate way of describing it. It has been a whirlwind, to say the least. But there have been times, particularly when I was waiting for my green card after being married, those times seemed like the slowest crawl in history, and I found it difficult to adjust. I won't lie, and that's partly the reason I got into wrestling, was because of that huge gap, that huge space of time in which I was waiting for something to happen.
So you had nothing better to do, so you're like, I'm going to start wrestling? Is that kind of what happened here?
Well, I suppose, of course, I don't want to do wrestling a disservice, because it's not just something that's a pick up and play hobby. No, I had always been a fan. I had been a fan since I was a child. I'm in my mid-30s now. I have loved wrestling since I was 4 or 5. It just so happened that legally I couldn't work, and so I had to find something to fill my time, and reading and masturbation just wasn't cutting it anymore. So And I tried doing them separately, tried doing them together, and eventually I had to do something realistic. And so I just put wrestling in Indianapolis into Google, a couple of months after moving here, and started sifting through, because I was aware, of course, that Indiana has a very storied, a very complex and rich pro wrestling history. Out of all the states, Indiana is one of the most prominent, I feel, in both past and present, and certainly going on to the future. And it just so happened that WCWO was literally around the corner from my home. And one of the gripes I had about America was the lack of things I could walk to. There's no such thing as walking distance in the United States. And it was just by pure chance that WCWO was around the corner. And again, just by pure chance, that 2 days after I found them, they happened to be taking a new intake of students into the training school there.
Now, real quick, I want to jump in here because I want to mention something. Is that it's hilarious to me that you mentioned that there's nothing that you can walk to, because I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, where you absolutely have to have a car, and most Midwest cities are that way. However, I've been to Indianapolis many times and marveled that there are many things you can walk to. So, it's just funny to me because European countries are just kind of based on bike riding and walking a lot more because they're smaller in general. But that's pretty awesome that you found WCWO. Now, are they in walking distance?
Yeah. Yes, okay. It's 2 minutes walking distance. It was unreal. I thought perhaps maybe I died and this was my death rattle fever dream, that something was attainable like that. But no, I turned up at WCWO not knowing what to expect, certainly from an in-ring perspective. Of course, I stood out like a sore thumb by virtue of my accent and total lack of experience. And got to work, I started training. I started learning the absolute basics, running the ropes, headlocks, locking up. And I found it, like anyone who's become involved in the business, anyone who stepped inside the ring, immediately it's addictive. It is like being smacked in the back of the head, and in my case, literally. And it is an addictive property. It's unreal to describe it. And anyone listening to this, of course, most people who listen to this will be involved in the business in some way, will understand what I mean. It was only a couple of months into my time with WCWO that, of course, we realized that while I would struggle to be an adequate wrestler, to put it lightly, my talents lay in verbalizing things. And I quickly became the announcer at WCWO, and that is the basis for what I have today, the career and the reputation and the potential future that I have today is all down to that happy sequence of events.
Well, your accent will set you apart, obviously, with the vocal type stuff. And I think that having a British announcer, or announcer with a British accent has kind of makes your promotion seem a little nicer in a lot of ways, Now, and folks that are listening to this may not be familiar with WCWO. It's kind of a long time place in Indianapolis, and it's a place where folks that listen to this show will be familiar with folks like Jonathan Wolf, Joey Owens, the Iffy guys, Cole Radrick, guys like that. Those are kind of the folks that you see a lot at WCWO, right?
That's right, yeah. WCWO, or Wild Championship Wrestling Outlaws, to give it its full name, is a fantastic and unique place. It offers people opportunities they may not get elsewhere. You turn up, you get your spot, and you do your stuff. And there's a regular crowd. There's a core crowd of familiar faces that go every week, and that's partly what helps you grow as a performer, is seeing those same faces every week. Of course, there are new faces that come in, but there is that core, almost family of audience that are there to watch you, and you grow as a performer with them, and you grow as a person with them. My time as an announcer there, as I said, formed the foundation, the bedrock of what I have now and with what I will go on to achieve. And I'd had experience back home in England with performing on stage. I've been on television. I've been in plenty of bands and done the toilet circuit, playing gigs. So being on stage, being the center of attention certainly was not something that was new to me. But I was able to take those abilities and that experience and hone them and sharpen them at a place like WCWO.
What's the toilet circuit?
Is that not the thing here?
No.
All right, just the shit venues, you know?
Fair enough. I got you. We call those dive bars, I guess, here, you know. But that's pretty great. I like that, the toilet circuit. I'm gonna have to use that. Well, okay. So you're from, now. I am terrible at geography, but am I correct in saying that Liverpool is in the west of England? Is that correct?
It's the northwest of England. Yes, it's just above Wales. It's near Manchester, and it's about 250 miles away from London, which, as I'm learning, is nothing here. But to us, it's a good distance.
Yeah, I would imagine that kind of, running the toilet circuit in England probably isn't driving that much. But, running the toilet circuit in America, you're driving hundreds and hundreds of miles, especially in a place like Indiana where, cities are really far apart, as far as from your perspective, I'm sure. Now, are there any, differences or things that are alike between West Britain or your area from up there and the United States?
Oh, my God. I mean, how long have we got? Wow. That's a big question. Plenty. There is just down to, obviously, the size of everything. The distances between things are much greater, and the differences between cities are much greater. An hour from Indianapolis south will get me to Bloomington, where obviously there is a geographical and cultural difference, in as much as Bloomington is more of a college town and has a more sort of a gig-based and artistic vibe than perhaps Indy does. But if I were to take an hour's trip south from Liverpool, I would wind up in Manchester, which has a completely different outlook on life, different people, different accents, and a completely different history, and a great, immense rivalry as well. So there is that aspect of it. One thing, and I brought this up with a few people, is I miss I miss public transport, man. Because I didn't drive. I didn't actually drive until I moved to the States, because I didn't need to, because buses are plentiful. We have a passenger rail network, which, although isn't the greatest, did its job. And that's something that I completely didn't think wouldn't exist in this country, or certainly around where I live now.
It's a shame. And, every 10 years or so in America, especially if you're in the Midwest, there is a politician or someone who comes along and says, it's kind of like the Simpsons episode, monorail. It's like this guy will show up and say, oh, we're going to build this light rail system that's going to go from this city to that city. And I'm in Cincinnati. Recently, well, it's probably been 15 years ago or something like that, they built a light rail in the city of Cincinnati. And I remember driving around the city and seeing empty city buses everywhere I look. And I thought to myself, how is this rail going to succeed when people won't even take a bus? And the rail has failed miserably. If you go anywhere and see it, it's just completely empty. And it's a shame. We as Americans have a real hard time adjusting to that. But man, I tell you what, if I could throw my car keys away and never have to drive again, and I'd be all about that. That would be awesome. Are you, do you find driving a hassle, or do you find it something that you enjoy?
Oh, I love it. I'm addicted to it. I will, any excuse now to go for a drive, I will. And sometimes, it'll be the weekend and I'll be antsy and I'll be saying to my wife, hey, do you just want to drive around and look at stuff and waste gas? Let's fucking do it. I lament the lack of public transport, but at the same time, I've completely fallen in love with the driving culture in this country. I just wanted to touch quickly upon your last question. Similarities and differences. I feel there are some similarities in how people in Indiana and at some points the Midwest, because I have got out a little further in the Midwest, and people from my part of the world, particularly Northern England and the Northwest, how they approach life and how they speak with other people. Very heart on their sleeve, very upfront and honest about their feelings. And it makes communication easier. It makes achieving what you want easier. And it makes those relationships and friendships you have with people a lot easier when you know what level you're on. I'm taken aback in a good way by the directness of people in this part of the world. I very much appreciate it. There's no second guessing. There's no real hidden agendas. People are upfront with you, and that is a real blessing.
That is a refreshing take. I would say that probably half of our audience, who are folks that are glass half full type people, are like, yeah, he's right. And then the other half are like, oh man, he's naive, you know. But here's the deal. You've been very lucky, as you said. You woke up from this fever dream where you thought you were dying, and you ended up in WCWO, as you said. And you've been around some really great people. And, you know, we know a lot of the folks from that area that are in wrestling, and they are, you know, some of the best people that we know in wrestling, from, you know, as far as from going to shows and, you know, doing the podcast and everything. When I see folks from that area out, they're always cool. They're always nice. Some of them are a little shy, and that's about it. You know, you get what you see is what you get. And that's a really great benefit. Now, have you experienced some of the bullshit politics of wrestling, and then how have you dealt with that? Because that does exist no matter where you are.
Oh, whoa, man, that's a prickly question.
Well, don't get any heat, okay? You know.
No. I'll be honest with you. Because of my position, what I do. I am an announcer. I'm a backstage correspondent. I make videos that promote shows and specific workers. I'm the managerial consultant at New Wave Pro, which is effectively a general manager, an on-screen authority. I have been able to circumnavigate the worst excesses, perhaps, of the politics of pro wrestling, which I am more than aware of. I've read my fair share of autobiographies and biographies where people talk about the politics. I watched WCW in their dying days, so I know what politics looks like.
That's awesome.
You know, when I'm watching Kevin Nash beat Goldberg, that's politics in action. You know, the finger poke of doom, I've seen it. But I have been very fortunate in that my position grants me the ability to not necessarily rise above it, because it's a necessity. All of human interaction is based on politics and people trying to achieve their goals at the behest of others. That's generally how things work. But while having seen things in action, I feel I've been able to not be strictly a part of it and simply apply my talent and abilities to helping other people, which is primarily my goal. Yes, I have Earl Joseph. Yes, that is something I'm trying to promote. But you look at my videos, you look at how I interact with people at shows. It's the brand, it's the worker, it's the company, it's the show, it's the night. I'm more about trying to put other people, the region, and wrestling as a whole first before anything else. And I think that is how I've managed to avoid, so far, the sting of politics in wrestling.
Well, I mean, something you said in there is absolutely tremendous. And this is one of the reasons that I can tell you get pro wrestling. There's lots of pro wrestling people out there. There's lots of people in the business. There's lots of people that are in front of the camera, behind the camera, and some of them don't get it. And what they don't get is that it's not about you. It's about the entire thing. It's about promoting everybody else. I mean, you know, the Road Home from Wrestling podcast, what we do is we travel to different shows. I interview people and stuff like that. And mostly what we do is try to promote, you know, the folks that we like, the folks that we see out there, the folks that are nice to us, even some that aren't, you know, and you know, my favorite wrestlers are the ones that make their opponent look amazing, you know, and whether it's in the ring or out of the ring, I mean, that's it. You know, pro wrestling doesn't owe us anything. We owe everything to it. And if we can all kind of give, whether we're a fan, a person behind the scenes, a person in the ring, or an announcer, we can all give that and have that same attitude. That's when that real magic starts to happen. Now, you mentioned New Wave Pro. We're going to get to that here in a second. But there's another place that has a big show coming up this Saturday, which is February 29th. and it's Upstart Pro, and it's like a tournament. It's a dynamic duo invitational tourney, and I couldn't find much other information about it except that Justin Kyle's going to be there. So tell me a little bit about this Upstart Pro promotion, and let's start with where it's located.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Justin Kyle, and if Justin Kyle's at a show, generally it's going to be worth talking about. The guy is a monster, and if he turns up, then you better shut the hell up and pay attention. But yeah, Upstart Pro Wrestling, who I correspond for, and I also host the weekly Upstart Pro Review every Wednesday at Facebook at 7 p.m. Eastern. We are hosting the Dynamic Duo Invitational Tournament. Now, that is a huge, huge tag team tournament with a huge, huge trophy for the winners. The types of teams we're looking at some of the best, some of the youngest, some of the most powerful teams in Indianapolis and the wider region. We've got the Original Sins turning out for this tournament. We've got the Knockout Society from Terre Haute coming in. We've got High Society, who are the current New Wave Pro Tag Team Champions as well. So there's good pedigree there. We've got Halal Beefcake, who have worked separately at WWE and at TNA/Impact before. And we've also got a team worth looking out for. They've been put together for this tournament. Sam Knight, who is DCCW and New Wave Pro Champion, team him up with Tane Latu under the name ZWT. Now, they won't tell us what that means, but we're just going to have to roll with it. And we've also got the Sucker Punch Club. There are 14 teams turning out for this tournament. And, I've been talking about it for weeks with Upstart Pro, and we're finally going to see it come to fruition on Saturday, February 29th at the Christian Park Activity Center in Indianapolis. That's 4200 English Avenue. The show runs from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. Bell is 5, so doors are going to be around 4 o'clock. And it's only $10 general admission. And you're going to get a lot, and here's a phrase I can use now I live in the United States. You're going to get a lot of bang for your buck, all right?
There you go.
$10 general admission for all of that pedigree, all of those teams. Justin Kyle's going to be defending his Indianapolis championship against Rick Vidal. He set an open challenge, and Rick Vidal was crazy/brave enough/foolhardy enough to answer that challenge. And then we've also got Ava Lee, who is the Indianapolis Women's Champion. She's defending her championship against Valerie Verman, who is a very fierce competitor. So that's going to be one to look out for. But it's going to be a big top tournament.
Well, that's a whole lot of names that I have not heard before, and that piques my interest. I am a big fan of seeing people I've never seen before, and that tells you a little bit about where we've kind of focused our location as far as where we've gone to shows. And recently we attended that Bizarre Lucha show in Indianapolis, and man, we loved it, and we got to see some folks from Indianapolis and people we were familiar with, and it's kind of whet my appetite to the Indianapolis wrestling scene. I think you're going to see us show up a little more there this in 2020. So this Upstart Pro thing, it sounds like something that we need to get to. Now, I love tag team wrestling. It's one of my favorite things ever, and a whole night of it, I mean, that's going to be tremendous, as well as Justin Kyle killing some guy as well. That's always a good time. That guy, man, he's something else. I really like him because he reminds me of Goldberg, but all the best parts of Goldberg, not the bad parts of Goldberg. It's like if Goldberg could really wrestle. That's what this guy looks, is like. What is that? Is that a pretty accurate description, would you say?
Yeah, that's something I've thought, but not something I've expressed to him, because I'm sure he hears it all the time. He's a big guy. He's got no hair and he wears black trunks. Your first instinct is to say, and of course he uses the spear, but you say, you are correct in what you say, man, in as much as, the guy can work. He's not just power, and he's not just his aesthetic. He comes into the ring and he's pace and power, and he's presence as well. There are 3 P's there that I've accidentally just coined. Pace, power, presence.
Yeah, one thing that I always like about a wrestler, it doesn't matter what size they are. And, Macho Man's an easy example of this. They work big. and sometimes you have little guys that work big, like Atticus Kogar. I think he works big. You see him and you think he's much bigger than he is. And Justin Kyle works big and he's big. So it's kind of, a double whammy as far as that goes. And he's always a blast. Now, you also have New Wave Pro Steel City Madness coming up on March 7th. And that's in Terre Haute, Indiana. I think I said that right. And tell me about New Wave Pro. It's a fairly new promotion. I know, Cole Radrick has begged me to come out there quite a bit. And the one time I was ready to go, and then it got canceled because of weather. It's a little far for us as far as that goes. But tell me a little bit about New Wave Pro, and tell me how awesome that setup is in person, because it looks so fucking cool in the pictures.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to make a couple of corrections. The Englishman is going to correct the American here. It's Terre Haute, which is French for higher ground. Okay, so there's your little history lesson. Now, in fact, the second correction I'd like to make, and I'm not admonishing you, this is just something for the listeners. New Wave Pro has actually been around for quite some time. We recently had. In January 11th of this year was anniversary, and it was the 7th anniversary show of New Wave Pro. That's right. Now, New Wave Pro in 2020 is really making a very solid push to be a very serious competitor, not just in Indiana, not just in the Midwest, but nationally and internationally as well. The sky is very much the limit for New Wave in 2020, and they have assembled a team that is geared towards doing that. I deal, as well as being the managerial consultant or general manager, if you will, giving off that kind of William Regal vibe. Away from the thing, I do backstage correspondence. I'm also very heavily involved with the social media aspects, the uploading to YouTube, constantly coming on podcasts and talking about it. It's a project worth believing in. We also have the director, Con House, who is another growing personality in the local scene. He is our commentator. He's also a very prominent member of the online team as well, and somebody I would recommend you get on this show, because he, like me, is a rent-a-mouth as well. You know what I mean? But we have... we have Steel City Madness coming up on the 7th of March, as you said, and that is going to be one of the centerpieces of the New Wave calendar. We are going to have Sam Knight, the New Wave Pro champion, fighting in a steel cage with Joey O'Reilly. We're also going to have two huge triple threats going on. We've got Cole Radrick versus Shiloh Greaves, Gregory Iron. Now, these three have been going back and forth online with their promos. A real war of words has developed, and March 7th, it's all going to come down to it in the ring, and these three are going to fucking rip each other's heads off. Honest to God, it is going to be something worth watching. The other triple threat we have is Braden Lee versus Josh Crane versus Paragon. Now that is a very exciting mix, because these are three very, very distinct individuals with different styles, different approaches, and different looks. And that is going to be really, really interesting to see. And now the incentive for those guys in the triple threat matches are that the winners of each triple threat, so that's Cole, Shiloh, and Gregory, and Braden, Josh, and Paragon, if I may use their first names, like we're very familiar, the winners of those two triple threats in April will be going to face our ultra rapid champion. Okay.
Ultra rapid champion. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, it's a championship that supports and promotes your quicker, your high flyers. Okay. Each match has a 10-minute time limit. So you got to get the job done. If you want to win that championship, you got to get the job done. The holder of the championship, if they have three successful consecutive defenses of that championship, they can vacate the championship and put all their money into a shot for the big New Wave Pro Championship as well.
Wow, I like that. I like that concept. That's pretty cool. I like it when promotions do something different, and that 10-minute time limit, that really, plays well to our kind of lack of attention span as an audience. I really dig that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we've got that, and also we have an Ultra Rapid Championship match at Steel City Madness on Saturday, March 7th. That's between current champion Aaron Atlas and the shooter Freddie Hudson, who I'm very familiar with. I see him wrestle a ton, and the guy is all power. He moves quick, but he'll put you in a hold, and he'll try and rip your shoulder off as well. They don't call him the shooter for no fucking reason, I tell you.
Yeah, we're very familiar with Freddie Hudson. He's been on this show before, as well as Cole Radrick has. And, Braden Lee, my co-host John, that's pretty much his favorite wrestler that's on the indies right now. He's a big Braden Lee fan, and that guy's brazy. I don't even know what it means.
Brazy. That's right, straight brazy.
I don't even know what it means, but he's brazy. So I guess you know what it means.
I don't know what it means, but you might not know what it means, but it makes sense when he walks through the curtain all of a sudden. And that's the sign of a good fucking gimmick.
Well, I tell you what, how much are tickets to the show?
That's $10 general admission. It's at the Terre Haute National Guard Armory, 3614 Maple Avenue, Terre Haute, Indiana. Another aspect of New Wave's huge, huge push to become a real, genuine name and promotion on the map, and not just on the Indiana map, not just the Midwest map, but the United States map, is that all the shows, certainly for 2020, will be at the Terre Haute National Guard Armory, and it is a hell of a venue. We have a new ramp to debut. We are bringing together VIP ticket experiences for fans for shows going forward, where they have meet and greets, where they get to experience the show from another angle. They're not just a paying customer. We want to welcome them as family as well. We also have huge plans that I'm not sure I could say, but it's something worth keeping on. If you keeping an eye on our YouTube channel, certainly towards the end of March, that's my big hint to you. Something big is coming for New Wave. And I suggest that all listeners and all people who are interested in any aspect of professional wrestling keep their eyes on New Wave. But that is Steel City Madness on Saturday, March 7th. New Wave Pro, Terre Haute National Guard Armory. It's going to be a hell of a show. And I don't say that just because I'm working for them. I say that as a fan, as somebody who loves wrestling and somebody who wants to inform people just where the good wrestling is.
Yeah, and you're only paying $10 to see somebody beat up Cole Radrick. So, I mean, I would pay $50 to see somebody beat up Cole Radrick easily, maybe more.
As the managerial consultant at New Wave, man, I can't take favorites. I'm a fan of Cole in and out of the ring. He's a good bloke and a fantastic wrestler. Really, really something to watch.
Well, go ahead.
No, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we've seen him from, some of his very early days. We've been watching Cole Radrick wrestle for over 3 years now. And it's been a lot of fun to watch him grow. He's kind of part of the Road Home family, and he's also a little piece of shit. So we like to fuck with him. So, but anyway, one more question you didn't quite answer for me. This, I see these pictures of the New Wave Pro setup, and if you've never seen this, check it out. Go to New Wave Pro on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, and check out the setups that they have. I mean, these pictures are beautiful, and I can't imagine it. I mean, it must look even better with wrestling going on in there. I mean, tell me about that setup and how gorgeous it is.
Yeah, it's sleek, and it's only ever improving. I mean, you've seen from the pictures, we get the lighting right. It only adds to the atmosphere. The ramp is going to be beautiful as well. Our entranceway, it all adds a very professional sheen, and that is what we are concerned with. We are almost obsessed as a team at New Wave with how it's put together. And we are always talking about improvements. But you're right in saying it is a beautiful setup, and it only adds to the occasion. It only adds to the atmosphere, the things that are going on. I would urge your listeners to check out and to follow New Wave Pro on both Twitter and Facebook, because there are big things going on. We are always letting people know, not just about the events, not just about the promos, but we are letting people in to see the latest going on with our, with how we're shaping the ringside, how we're adding to our entranceway, the ticket experiences and the promotions and offers that we are given. So it's not just a wrestling experience. It's going to be an immersive experience. And part of that, as you rightfully point out, is in how the stage is set. And I don't mean the literal stage. I mean the whole event itself. You go out there, and man, I feel it. I go out there and watch the matches during the show once I've done my bits backstage, and once I've come out and done my bits with the show. I come out and I take it all in, and you really get that big fight feel. You know, we have a fantastic announcer, Chris Abel, who really lends that sense of occasion to the show, just like Michael Buffer, just like all the great announcers you know. And it's all part of the package, and that's what makes New Wave such a fantastic proposition.
Well, thank you for saying Michael Buffer and not Bruce Buffer. I want to punch Bruce Buffer in the face. But we've talked a lot about stuff that isn't Earl Joseph. So what we need to do is we need to talk about Earl Joseph, because that's why you're on here. You had an ill-fated main event. Your first main event was had a little problem, and I sure would like to hear the story about it, because I've only heard the rumors. So.
Rumors that I'm a shit wrestler. Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. It was my first. It was. I'd taken some steps to work, and I had created Lord Britannia, which was my gimmick. I used to come to the ring. I had Union Jack tights, the British flag, Union Jack. I had a British flag around my neck. I would come out to Rule Britannia as my entrance theme. And I would just be this arrogant, horrible arsehole, which, you know, there's not much difference between Lord Britannia and the man portraying him in that respect. No, I'm kidding, obviously. So, yeah, I got to the point where I'd worked a few matches, and I was confident enough. You know, I'm never going to be as good as any of the names we've mentioned. And I was starting to really find my feet as an announcer, as a promo guy, as a video guy, as a social media guy, other aspects of wrestling. But I like to keep one foot in the ring, as it were. So we come to a show, and we're in Paragon, Indiana. And it's my first main event. You know, I get put up there. It's a spot show. It's my first main event. And I'm pleased as punch, right? I am really made up that this is happening. It's a triple threat. It's myself, Nashay Laveau, out of Indianapolis, and Ava Lee, who I mentioned as the women's champion of Upstart Pro. So the match starts, and the angle we run is that I taunt the two girls. I say they're not worthy of my time, and they jump me, they beat the shit out of me, and they dump me out the ring. And I'm lying there on the boiling hot tarmac because it's outside. It's a street festival, and I can already feel blisters bubbling on my skin, I swear to God. And the angle was I get up, I come round, I dump one of the girls out the ring, I grab the other, whip them off the ropes, hit a drop kick, which is one of my trademark moves. Somehow, against all the odds, I could hit a fine drop kick. I would think I was like Kurt Hennig or the Rocket Owen Hart, you know, something like that. Now there's a reference that shows my age, the Rocket Owen Hart. Wow. And this time, for whatever reason, I perform the drop kick. I land it, but I also land directly on my right wrist, and it just cannot stand up to such scrutiny, and it pops. It breaks with a wet pop. That's what I thought, and I turn to the ref immediately, and my arm's waving like a windsock, you know, at an airfield. And I say to the ref, I go, I think it's broken. And what can the ref do? You know, the ref is obviously the show must go on. My opponent, not being fully aware of events, stands over me, kicks me to the floor, slaps me in a camel clutch, right? While my wrist is like dangling off my arm, you know, and it's awful. Eventually, I sort of break out the move, and I just roll out the ring. I get the hell out of there. And the last thing I remember before I got in the ambulance and was dosed up on morphine was one of the crowd. As I'm cradling my broken wrist, I hear one of the crowd goes, "Hey, hey, why don't you fuck off back to England? And they'll teach you how to wrestle properly. And, I mean, he was right. He was right. But I'll never, ever forget how that felt. Because I just had this broken wrist. I'd never actually broken a bone before until that happened. And I was cradling this broken wrist, and I just looked at the guy who said it and just walked off with my head down. And that was the last time I ever worked in ring as a wrestler, and that was September 1st, 2019. Not that I remember it, but I remember.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but this is one of the reasons I'm not a wrestler, is that I would break all of my bones the second that I did a move wrong or something like that. And man, that's a shame that fan had to give you shit on the way out. But at the same time, that's a moment, and wrestling's all about moments. And I swear to God, I tell you, those fans there will never forget that, and you will never forget that.
Yeah,
and,
it's a real dinner party anecdote, man. I'll tell that story until the day I die. If it gets you over, like, fucking use it, right?
Absolutely. Well, man, you got to be over with the listening audience at this point after that story. That's tremendous stuff. We've already told folks about Upstart Pro and New Wave Pro. You can follow them on social media. I'm sure you can fill me in on that stuff. But where can folks follow the Liverpool Lip, Earl Joseph, and see the further adventures of what you're out here doing?
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm quite easily found at the Liverpool Lip on Twitter, where I dispense my cynical wisdom, but I also do a lot of promotion. I'm involved with a number of companies, and I also just love to signal boost and promote other workers and other shows, because I believe one of my mottos is better protected whenever collected. We must work together to achieve a common goal. But yes, I can be found on Twitter at the Liverpool Lip. I can be found on Facebook under the name Earl Joseph, and I have a separate page which is more business oriented, which is just, I think, Earl Joseph : the Liverpool Lip. I mean, I'm not difficult to find, ultimately. There's not many people called the Liverpool Lip online, thankfully. I don't maintain a working Instagram because I just don't have the time or the patience anymore. But there is one more thing I'd like to promote, if I may. It's a booking that's come up very recently. I'm not sure when this show is supposed to go out, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's this Friday, 28th of February. The Liverpool Lip is going to be making his debut at Paradigm Pro Wrestling.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. For Southern Indiana Cadillac Combat, or SICK, if you like your acronyms. That's at 412 New Albany Street in Sellersburg, Indiana. And I just received the go-to. I'm told that I'm on it as of Saturday. When I was working a Fight or Die show as well, I never stop working. That's one thing about me. I never stop looking for new shows and new people to work with. I'm always about that. And that's taking place at Sellersburg, Indiana. You're going to see debuting at Paradigm Pro, Mance Warner. He's making his first appearance at Paradigm. And he's going to be taking on Myron Reed. And that's going to be a fucking hell of a match, man, I tell you. You've got Snoop Strikes, who's currently plying his trade at MLW. He's going to be taking on Freddie Hudson. So there's another one who gets a second mention. And we're going to see, and this is a match I want people to pay attention to for reasons that will become obvious when you get down there to Sellersburg. You're going to see IFHY, and in this case it's Ali Cat, Billy Starks, and Sean Kemp taking on the Premier. That's the Kenway, Camaro Jax, and Thomas Shire. Now that's going to be a big match to watch. So that's Paradigm Pro Wrestling, Southern Indiana Cadillac Combat. It's going to be their biggest show yet. They are putting a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of promotion into this. So even if you're not in the local area, man, just take a couple of hours out to drive to Sellersburg, because I really genuinely believe it's going to be one of those shows where you say, fuck, I wish I'd been there.
Yeah, we've been to many Paradigm shows. I was at some of their very first shows, and we've even sponsored one of their shows before. Very familiar with all the folks behind that, and there's some really good folks at Paradigm, and I'm really happy for them. They found a new building recently after having some issues, and I just really love those guys, and I want them to succeed. If folks can't make it to that, that's another one that'll be added onto IWTV, and you can use the code Paradigm to get, I think, 2 weeks for free, and check that out when that's up there. So that's tremendous stuff, man. Do you have any questions for me or anything else you'd like to add?
No questions. I just want to say that I think you're doing a stand-up job. I've listened to a number of the shows in preparation, and I think the team, I think the Road Home from Wrestling podcast is doing a stellar job, and they're putting the miles in, which is of course one of the prerequisites. You're literally putting the miles in. It's Road Home by name, Road Home by nature, and it's people like you and people like the podcast that form, a real support strut for what the in-ring workers are trying to do. And without guys like you, a lot of things would go unnoticed. So my time isn't really a question, but a statement of fact when I say that you're doing a great job, you and your contemporaries. And without you, people like us would struggle to get out there.
Well, I appreciate that. We do put in the miles. It fucking sucks, but it's kind of the path that we've chose. And like you said, the road home, we're living the gimmick, man. And it's a lot of fun, and it's been. One of the things that I never get to talk about on the show is like, what are the positives? I mean, there's a lot of negatives to doing a podcast. There's a lot of work, but man, it's a labor of love, and I get to have great conversations with folks like you and, hundreds of other people. We were talking about Cole Radrick earlier. I wouldn't even know Cole Radrick if it weren't for the show. And, we've had so many fun interactions with him, along with, like I said, hundreds of other people, including all the folks at Paradigm and a lot of the folks at these other promotions we've been talking about. So, it's pretty awesome. And I thank you for the kudos. And, I don't know. I think that's everything for me. And you can obviously follow our show at the Road Home FW on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow me at Drusiff for tweets. So for my guest, the Liverpool Lip, Earl Joseph, and me, thank you for listening.